everyone. Welcome to the Brother Sister Show, a family owned and operated podcast where two siblings keep in touch by talking about movies. This week, we're talking about Livia's pick, One Night in Miami. But before we get into that, what's up? Let's talk about what we watched this week. So I already see your list, and boy, what a list you have so
Great
far.
List.
So tell me.
Well, first things first, we watched the legendary 17 again with Zac Efron. It was Sebastian's pick. Well, I think we just went on Netflix and we just wanted to watch a movie, and it was the first thing that popped up. And he was like, "You want to watch that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he had never seen it. And I told him, "Well, you're in for a treat."
Wow.
Because it's actually, I like it. I think it's a fun movie.
I like it.
It's weird in, the whole when he's 17, it's like he almost makes out with his daughter. It's just kind of strange, but it's funny. And I just kept making fun of myself because I was like, I just remembered so much of this movie. And I told Sebastian it's because I had the biggest crush on Zac Efron. I mean, who didn't? But just the hair in that movie, it was so embarrassing about how I liked it so much. It was like that Justin Bieber haircut with the kind of like a helmet.
The Karen cut?
Kind of. And then I keep bothering Sebastian to grow his hair out. And I was like, this is not what I mean. Please don't do this. But yeah, it was very nostalgic to watch that. But still, like I said, it's a fun movie. It's funny.
That's not the worst.
Up. Yeah. And then I finished I started and I finished a show called The Alienist. In our Discord. I'm trying to start new things, and we had on Friday just people recommending stuff. So thank you to everybody who participated. And one of them was our mom, who was acting all brand new, saying The Alienist is my recommendation. Girl, I told you to watch that show.
That's funny.
I started watching it and I was like, oh, this is exactly something mom would like. Because it's about murder, and it happened. It's I don't know what period it is, but it's a period piece kind of show where they have corsets and all that shit. And it's about murder and true crime. So it's exactly what mom would like. And I was like, oh, she should watch this. Yeah, it's very good. Dakota Fanning, which I haven't seen her in anything in so long, and she's really good in it. Yeah, it's just a good show. If you guys if you like that kind of thing, Anthony, I feel like it's not your thing, but maybe I'm wrong. But you might like it. It's got some good love stories in it. It's got some good true crime. It's kind of some parts are hard to watch. It's kind of gruesome. It's an FX show, I think. It's on HBO Max. 17 again. I think it's on Netflix, and then The Alienist is on HBO Max. And and the last thing I watched, I thought I had something else, but no. So I watched A Promising Young Woman, which is a movie, a show, a movie I've been very excited to watch, with Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham's in it. And I don't want to say much because I'm sure you haven't seen it, Anthony.
No. And I was just about to ask, what is that?
You've never even heard of it?
Nah.
Just watch the trailer. This is the only time I'll say watch the trailer, because it has a really great use of the Britney Spears song Toxic. And it's so good. You just have to watch it. It's pretty polarizing, I think. I've heard a lot of people that not only don't like it, but actually hate it. And then a lot of people that really love it. And I'm on the side of really loving it. And I don't want to give it. I think saying anything will give stuff away, and I'm glad that you haven't seen anything about it. Actually, don't watch the trailer yet, but watch the movie. It's very good. I liked it a lot, and I'm curious to see but also I'm very curious to see what Kayla would think about it. So,
it's all right.
It was one of them that I think I was going to see during South by. So,
ooh, burn.
Yeah. Oh, I am going to. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but. South by did a really good job of, at least for me, I think it's good. A lot of people have issues with it, but they didn't refund us, but they did let us defer to other years. And for this year, because they're only doing online, they're not going to even try to do an actual like in-person festival. They let us defer again. So I deferred to next year, and then I get 50% off of the year after that one.
Damn.
And I get, so this one it's online only, and I think it's only a week, and they gave it to us for free. So I'm going to be going to the online one for free.
That's pretty cool.
And I took off of work, so it's going to be like an actual thing. I'm going to do it, and maybe we can try to redo all the ideas we had. Well, no, because the fucking recorder broke.
Oh, that's right.
I could just record it. I mean, I'll be at home, so I could just record it on my computer. Yeah. But yeah. So all good things that I've been watching. I haven't watched any duds.
Nice. I mean, 17 again arguably could be a dud.
Not in my book.
Not in mine either. I'm just saying someone hates it and I don't.
Well, I don't want them listening to this podcast.
Yeah, you heard. You heard. Right, you're right there listening. I know you guys are listening.
Mom. No, Mom would like it. I think she'd think it's fun. All right. What have you been watching?
Community. We just continue watching that. We'll just like make breakfast and we'll be like, let's just watch Community.
Did you start Fleabag?
Okay, no. So here's what Kayla and I both had 2 shows that we both want us to watch together. So we put it in a hat and drew out 4 of them. So we're going to watch. We haven't started because school also started. So it's kind of like hectic. Just our schedules. I got to figure out a groove. Mm-hmm. But first we're going to watch Vikings on Hulu or Amazon, on something. And then we're going to watch Fleabag. And then we're going to watch Chef. And then we're going to end it with Batman Beyond.
Chef? Like the show?
I guess it's a show. Kayla, what's Chef? Is it Chef the show? Chef, because you know how we're watching 4 shows?
It's a movie.
Oh.
You didn't tell me shows. You just said things I want to watch.
So things we want to watch. So Chef the movie.
I am so excited for you to see Fleabag.
Wait, what'd you say, Kayla?
I said you're always changing the narrative.
Yeah, changing the narrative. Just whatever I see fit. Yeah, I'm excited to watch Fleabag too. I mean, the hype.
I hate to hype it up too much, but it's so fucking good.
Well, we'll get there.
I watched it like after I finished it in 2 days. I think I said that, but after I finished it, I was like, God, I need to see it again. And I think I'm going to make Sebastian watch it because we keep going back and forth of like all these shows that we want to watch together. Mm-hmm. And his are just going to be anime. And I told him like, we'll just pick 2 shows and then we'll just keep doing that. And once your show ends, then we'll like do another one. But he wants to do Naruto. And that I was like, well, how many seasons and how many episodes? And I forgot how much
like
he told
900.
me, but it's a lot of episodes. But he said there's like a way you can skip, like you can do just the main story ones and you can skip certain ones. Oh. But I told him, I was like, I'll watch all of them if you want me to. And he was like, well, how are you going to find a show that's long? Or that's that long. And I said, well, I'm just going to keep fucking finding shows for you to watch. I have tons. So I think we're going to start with Fleabag because I actually really want to watch it again. It's so fucking good.
Yeah. We'll get there. Then we watched we watched Annabelle, like the first one where it's like her background story with like the orphans. I don't know.
There's a new movie coming out soon, I think.
In that like series?
Like The Conjuring or something. Not Annabelle, I think it's The Conjuring.
And the end of that, Annabelle, is kind of really messed up because like spoiler, she gets possessed. Like her name was like Janice and whatever. She got adopted. And she was like kind of like a sleeper agent. But like 18 years later or whatever, she like came back and just like slaughtered her parents. Like, Annabelle, stop.
Sleeper agent.
Yeah.
I forgot
Demon
about
made
that
it.
one.
Sleeper agent. I think that's all. Been working on a website.
How's that going?
I mean, You can check it out, twitch.tv/matchriff_ I've been streaming that. Very cool stuff. I'm pretty proud of where it's at right now. It's a lot of like styling stuff I need to fix, but a lot of cool functionality. It's like one tab I'm just working on, like the episodes, like where all the episodes are going to be. That's like the only thing. I was going to
say, I've been tuning in like the couple times that you stream it and you're just doing the episodes one. But.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the big draw. Because like, I mean, yeah. And Kayla just reminded me, we also watched Happy Feet 2.
Oh, yeah. I got to remember that.
Yeah. Which a lot of big like actors are in that. Like Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, Pink's in that.
I feel like it's easy to get. I mean, I think because of the people, like the magnitude of stars that you get for the like animated movies, like the ones that we do on here, I get so surprised every time I like read like who it's starring. Yeah. I'm like, why the fuck is Brad Pitt in this? But I think it's kind of easy to get them to agree to it because from what I understand, like it's not super easy to do voice acting because you still have to have the same energy and it takes a lot out of you. But I mean, you don't have to dress up for it. You don't have to do makeup. Like you just don't have to do a lot of the other stuff that's taxing.
Plus, if you have kids, like it's cool. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Hey, I'm in this. Let's go.
I know,
watch
like
it.
how many movies does Matt Damon have that he can like show his kids? You know?
Oh my gosh, tons. Well, that's pretty much it.
All right. Do you have any other pressing things to talk about, or do you want to just hit the break?
Let's just hit the break.
All right. It's going to be a long one. So, well, not the break, but this movie.
40-minute break.
Can you imagine? All right. See you after this. One Night in Miami is a fictional account of one incredible night where icons Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown gathered discussing their roles in the civil rights movement and a cultural upheaval of the 60s. Directed by Regina King, written by Kemp Powers, starring Kingsley Ben-Adir, Eli Gorey, and Aldous Hodge.
As for how much it cost and how much it made, we don't have those figures because this is such a brand new movie. It came out on Amazon Prime. They don't disclose that information. But critics gave it a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb and 98% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 83% on Metacritic. So pretty good.
Very good. For a movie that I hadn't really heard of until it was released. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. I thought it blew up with it when it came out.
Same, but I mean for good reason because spoiler alert, I loved it. All right. So let's just jump into it. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of history. So we're going to have to talk a lot about stuff. And also just I did research so I can understand what was happening. So I'm going to give that information to you guys. All right. So we start with Cassius Clay, who is Muhammad Ali, but they call him Cash throughout this whole time. So I'm going to refer to him as Cassius. And he's played by Eli Gorey. And we start with him at Wembley Stadium in 1963. And he's beating the shit out of this guy. I didn't get the guy's name. But it's to the point where his team is getting upset at him, where they're like, hey, we paid you, like they paid you for a fucking show, dude. Like if you're just going to knock him out in the first round, then what's the point? But he gets too cocky and he gets knocked out for it. I wouldn't say knocked out, but he gets knocked down.
He still won the fight. Like we find out later, like he still won it because the bell rang. But like the tides were turning in that fight. For sure.
If it went on a little bit longer, then
who knows?
All right, so just to give a little bit more background about Muhammad Ali, I don't know if anybody needs it, but here it is. He is an American professional boxer, activist, entertainer, and philanthropist. He was a heavyweight boxing champion with an impressive 56-win record. He was also known for his brave public stance against the Vietnam War. Next, we meet Sam Cooke, who is played by Leslie Odom Jr., and he's playing at the Copacabana for the very first time, and he's very excited. But the crowd is very silent, and they're not responsive or receptive to him at all. I wonder why. And people are leaving, and the show is just not great at all. And just to give background about Sam Cooke, he was an American singer, songwriter, and entrepreneur. He was also influential as a composer and producer, and is commonly known as the King of Soul, or I think they called him Mr. Soul in the movie. And he's also known for his distinctive vocals and significance in popular music, as we'll learn a little bit later. After this, we meet Jim Brown, who's played by Aldous Hodge. He's meeting Mr. Carlton, which is the only name that I could find for whoever this guy was. And it's a very wild meeting where it starts off, whoever the fuck this old white man is super nice. He's like complimenting him. But when it gets time to him offering to help move something, he says, well, we don't let and then N-words into the house. And I was shook, and so was Jim. He was absolutely shook by that, but you could tell he wasn't all that surprised, as we'll learn a little bit later.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Kayla and I were just like, damn.
Yeah.
Like that came out of nowhere. Because he was talking about how, like, his football record is like, man, you make me proud to be from Georgia. All this stuff, like praising him, and then
a big old yikes. And so, like I said, Jim Brown is a former American football player, sports analyst, and actor. He was a fullback for the Cleveland Browns of the NFL from 1957 to 1965, and he rushed for 1,863 yards during the 1963 NFL season. Holy shit. I don't know what that means exactly, but that's a big number. And lastly, we meet Malcolm X, who is talking to his wife about a disagreement that he's having with the Nation of Islam. It's the first instance that he's talking about it, but it does come back towards the end. Malcolm X was an African-American Muslim minister and human rights activist. He is best known for his time spent as a vocal spokesman for the Nation of Islam and articulating concepts of race pride and Black nationalism. And so we start our night in Miami with Cassius having a disagreement with his manager about having Malcolm there. Because if you know anything about history, you know that Malcolm X was a very, at least for white people, they were just very uncomfortable around him because of all the things that he would say. And so his manager was just like, hey, if you have this guy here, like, we know that he's your friend, but like all these white businessmen that work with you, you know how they're going to feel about him. And he was like, I don't fucking care.
They gave me my money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only reason that they have any money to be giving him is because of him. So like, if he wants to have his friend there, then he's going to have his friend there. And so after that, we meet Sam Cooke again, and his wife was with him. And a fun fact about this is that Leslie Odom Jr., who plays Sam Cooke, and Nicolette Robinson, who plays Barbara Cooke, his wife, are actually also married in real life. And another thing that I found just by chance was Mr. Carlton from the beginning, his like granddaughter, I think. That actress is actually the Beau Bridges is the actor, right? The actress that plays his granddaughter is actually his daughter, like in real life.
Oh.
Tons of connections everywhere. Okay, after this, Cassius meets with Malcolm, and then they start to pray together before his fight. They talk a little bit about how he's going to be joining the Nation of Islam. He's going to become Muslim after this. I think they start talking about that, but either way, you can kind of tell this is when it's going to happen. And then they talked about their plans after the fight, where they'll gather for an after party, and they allude to some sort of plan that Cassius didn't really tell the rest of the guys, didn't tell Jim or Sam. So that's a fun thing to not tell your friends what they're getting into. Then we get to the fight. We get to it pretty quick, which I was surprised by. Yeah. But the pacing in this movie is really good. So we get to the fight, and Cassius is doing great, as nobody's surprised. And Jim Brown is ringside along doing commentary. Malcolm is taking pictures, and Sam is in the crowd with his wife. And I think I talk about it a little bit later, but I don't know a lot about history because I don't know, history is not my strong suit, but I wasn't aware that Malcolm X was such a big like photographer. Like he was so into photography.
Yeah, neither did I.
which
I
is a cool
also
thing to learn about. So,
didn't know it was Muhammad Ali in the ring.
oh
I
my
knew
God.
his name before he transitioned was Cassius Clay, but it never clicked until Kayla was like, well, it kind of clicked for Kayla and I both at the same time because she had no idea about what this movie was about. So like, whenever he was Jim was like narrating or commentating, he was like, man, he's floating. He's like saying all this stuff about how he's just like super light on his feet. It
Mhm.
just like kind of clicked for both of us. Like, wow, it's Muhammad Ali.
And just the way, like, if the only real thing I know about him is like how he would talk. Like he was, you always see the clips of him, and whenever he kept shouting that he was pretty, like I
Yeah.
just loved. I think I made a note about it. How like after, so he wins. Because his opponent quits, and he was saying like he's ugly. He keeps talking about how he's ugly. He's like, do you see him in person, like up front? Like he's fucking ugly. And I just love after he wins, he keeps yelling like for his friends. He's like yelling at Malcolm. He's yelling for Jim, and then he's yelling that he's pretty and that Sam Cooke is pretty. He's just talking about how his friends are pretty. And I really love it. You don't hear a lot of men calling themselves pretty nowadays, which is I really loved that. So after the fight, and if you also, so I looked up after this, I was just looking up a bunch of pictures because, like I said, because they show Malcolm like taking tons of pictures, I was like, oh, I wonder if these actually, like, if I could find them somewhere. And you do. And I saw a picture of him like you could see him like Cash just like yelling and just like yelling into the crowd because he was saying like he was yelling at I think it was the reporters where he was like, see, I fucking told you. And he was pointing at them. You can find a picture of him like doing that, of just like pointing outside of the ring. And
That's
the guy
awesome.
that plays him looks like, at least he just feels like maybe it's just the essence of him. But
Yeah.
he did a really good job of that.
He did. There's another example with that picture, like parallel. Don't let me forget. I want to mention it later on.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, just don't let me forget.
I think I made a note of it, maybe like towards the end.
Yeah, towards the end. And what was I gonna say? Oh, we find out that he's only like 22 at this time.
Which
what
the fuck?
Wow. Like I'm 20 right now, so like in 2 years I need to become the heavyweight champion.
I'm 2 years older than him.
Ridiculous.
And he knows it.
Yeah.
That's one thing I really love about him throughout this movie is that he's very vocal about how good he is.
As a champ.
Which I love. I mean, why not be? If you are actually the best, then fucking tell us. So after the fight, they all gather at the hotel, and I really love the moment where Sam gets there like so fucking early because that's such a mood where he is like ready to get to the party, and then his reaction to seeing the room in the motel and being the first person there was so fucking funny. But the rest of the guys do get there shortly after, and they finally ask, while they're all gathered in there, they ask Malcolm like when the party is starting, and he was like, well, it's not. This is the party. Shortly after that, like my notes kind of like, it just feels like a lot of stuff happened. So my notes are kind of like just one after the other. So Cassius announces to them that he's going to be joining the Nation of Islam. And Sam says that he's not sure that's a great idea, which starts an ongoing fight that happens between Malcolm and Sam throughout the entire movie. And I do want to note that the conflict between Sam Cooke and Malcolm X was actually fictitious. So this movie, I should have looked this up, but I think what I remember reading is that it is based on a real event, but whatever like happens in the movie, a lot of it is fictitious. I mean, it's kind of just a retelling, and I think it's a play actually, just based on what they think could have happened, or just using that event as kind of a, what's the word? Kind of like a mode to tell a certain story. So this specific conflict was fictitious, and it came from the screenwriter Kemp Powers' struggle as the only Black writer on staff for Star Trek Discovery, and the conflict he felt over how much of himself to insert into the show. Which I think he does a great job of, because I have a lot a lot of stuff to say about this conflict, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, I think what you said about this like event being, or how the fight was fictitious, just the little research that I did on this movie was like, that was like the main thing, is like no one really knows what happened in that hotel room that night. But if it was anything as cool as this, like, it was a cool night.
And I think too, at least with these 4 people, there's so much recorded about them. They're very prominent figures, especially within this time, that you could be able to at least infer what was happening, or like what Kemp Power did, which I think is a really amazing tool for storytelling, where I read a little bit more into like what conflict he was talking about. And he was saying that it's like he went through this conflict in his mind, the conflict that he had of being the only Black writer on a show. And the 2 people, like kind of like I don't know the way to describe this, but like the 2 sides of that conflict that he was having, like the 2 disagreements he was having in his head, Sam Cooke and Malcolm X kind of personified those 2 struggles. And so that way it was so like, it felt natural for him to try to like have that argument within his head with those 2 prominent figures. And like I said, especially it's so recorded how they actually felt about this issue, about civil rights and about, being Black in America, that you can kind of make those assumptions as to what they would say. And it being kind of accurate. Like, I feel like throughout these characters, I knew in my mind not to think that all of this actually happened, but I felt like I did learn a lot about these people, like these figures as people.
Definitely.
Which I loved. All right, so back to the movie. Malcolm tells his wife, he calls his wife, he tells her about Cassius announcing that he's a Muslim and he's going to announce it. I think he said the next day, and his wife is super excited. And she mentions like some plan that Malcolm has that we don't really know about yet. I think they kind of allude to it. It's kind of a mystery. After this, while this is happening, I think Sam leaves for whatever reason. Jim tells Cassius about the movie that he just did. And I did a little research and I found out that the movie that he mentions, in which he plays a Buffalo Soldier who gets killed halfway through, is a movie called Rio Conchos. So if you want to see it, if you do that, what you will. While Malcolm is on the phone with his wife, he does notice 2 white men watching him in the parking lot. They just look really sketchy, just standing there in front of a car, like staring at him. And he tells Sam, or Sam sees him like looking, and he kind of pokes fun at him, but he is legitimately scared. He looks pretty shaken up by this. And he tells the guys, they go to the roof, they take a couple of pictures, but during this, he tells the guys, like, ever since there was some tension between him, and he calls this guy Mr. Muhammad, but I think he's talking about Elijah Muhammad, who was I didn't do tons of research into this guy because it was very convoluted, but what you need to know is that he had a lot of disagreements with Mr. Muhammad, who was I think at this time the leader of the Nation of Islam, and it was a very public thing, like all of them knew about it. So yeah, that was he said that had just started to happen more throughout that tension. And then Malcolm and Sam get into a really interesting fight. This is the fight that I was talking about. And I think it's interesting because it feels like it's happening like right now, where Malcolm is basically telling Sam that he's not using his voice well enough, because as a singer in the civil rights movement, he feels like he should be using, your voice is your power, so you should be using it for good. So he's not using it well enough, or he's just not using it enough at all. And so Sam says that he owns the masters to his music and he signs Black artists. So how is that not enough? And it reminds me of how people are very quick to criticize other people's activism, because that's basically what he's doing, right? Mm-hmm. Where this movie does show us two different sides of the spectrum. Like, one is Malcolm, who historically in this movie too, he's pretty disciplined, and I hate to use the word aggressive, but that's kind of what it feels like. Like, he's very maybe like open about his approach, and about the fact that he's angry, which he should be, and he's not afraid to show it. But for Sam, Sam is the other side, where he he feels that being successful and like he mentioned, owning all the masters to his own music, which is like something that not even fucking Taylor Swift can do. You know what I mean? Like that's a big deal. And giving back to his community, to his church is how he wants to approach the fight. And he can definitely be angry about what's happening. Like, I think it's just an interesting conversation where like Malcolm, I think because he's not saying enough, because he's not doing enough, he feels like he's not angry enough, which is not that fair. Because he doesn't show it like Malcolm wants him to. So I guess the question is, should we be measuring people's activism against each other? And it brings up a good point. They don't really resolve it, but I like that, where they don't say one is better than the other. But it is an interesting conversation, and it's kind of sad that it's still happening today. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what you thought about that.
I really, I don't know, because while I watched this movie, I feel like a lot of this movie was centered around their argument.
Yeah,
and there's like kind of a break in between it where I feel like, at least while I was watching it, Malcolm really like his point of view kind of shined a little bit more, because he brought up a Bob Dylan song.
Oh yeah,
right, and he was like, he's talking more about like oppression of our people, like more so than you are. And I was
Let's
like,
get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, okay. That's
Sorry,
fine.
there's a couple things and then we'll get straight to that. So right after or during this fight is when Malcolm brings up that Cassius' passion for being Muslim, like that he's just passionate about it. And Cassius stops him and he's like, well, I never said passionate. And he just comes clean about his doubts. And you can see how much it crushes Malcolm. And I wanted to note that because it comes back a little bit later. And before he like shows the music, which I love that moment. There's another moment that I love again, where, like you said, it feels like Malcolm is kind of like starting to shine more throughout this conversation, where his point of view, I was kind of like, okay, like I kind of I agree with him a little bit more. But then Sam brings up an amazing point where he tells Malcolm brings up the Beatles, right? Or he calls them the Beatles.
Yeah,
it's really weird. So he brings that up, and Sam tells Malcolm how it's pretty insulting for him to think that Sam didn't know it was coming, because not only did he see the British invasion coming from like a mile away, he fucking invested in it. And he tells a story where he gave the Rolling Stones permission to record a song written by R&B singer Bobby Womack, I think it's his name. And of course the song, like whenever Bobby sang it, it was, I think he said like number 94 on the 100 charts, or the chart of like Billboard Top 100 or whatever. And after the Rolling Stones sang it, it went to number 1 instantly. And this basically caused Bobby's version to all but disappear, because it started at 94 and then it just went like below that and it just disappeared. And he said like Bobby was super crushed at that. And Malcolm was like, yeah, of course he is. But then he was like, well, Sam said, then 6 months later, he got the check for his royalties. And if you remember from earlier, Sam said that his company owns their entire music. They own everything. So every single cent that song makes, he said every single time a white girl buys that record, they're putting money into my pocket. And it goes directly to Bobby. And he said, what's better, being a songwriter for a song that's at number 94 or a song that's at number 1? And so
number 1 every time.
Number 1 every time. And he says an amazing quote that I love. He said, everybody's talking about how they want a piece of the pie, but I don't. I want the goddamn recipe.
What a freaking line.
And then,
that's like an Instagram caption.
God, please do not do that.
I won't, but
it's very good though. Okay, and then sorry, go on to your I love this moment too, but I want you to tell it.
Well, yeah, Malcolm, he's like, that's great and all, but like back to his point, I feel like where Sam needs to use his voice, and he plays us a record of Bob Dylan's. And the line is, how many roads does a man have to walk for him to walk down for him to be a man? And he tells him that he's a good businessman, but the song that Bob Dylan wrote is more about oppression than anything that he's ever written.
Well, and
like that,
it's at number one. Like it's charted like higher than any of his songs ever has.
Yeah. That's just like
and he was like, if a white boy can do this, then why can't you? And I think his whole point is like, okay, you're making money, but like you're not saying anything. Like your music is making tons of money and you're making a lot of money for like the black people that you employ, but like you're not saying anything. And he was saying too, like you can imply the reason that he's not doing that is because like Sam is precious about his career, which I understand. I mean, not a lot of people can afford to be this like think that they can afford to be that vocal about things. And so he's trying to tell him like, you're scared about making statements, or you say you're scared about making statements due to your career, but this guy's made a song about oppression and he's doing fine. So what's your excuse?
Yeah.
And yeah, Sam is pissed.
Shook.
He just leaves. And like the look he gives him, I paused it so I can take notes. And then I looked up, and the look that Leslie Odom Jr. is giving him, I'm like, ooh, I was scared.
So sad.
Yeah, it just, because he was fucking pissed. And then after that, Malcolm says there's no room. Oh, this part I was shook by this part too, where Malcolm gets really pissed and he says there's no room for anyone to be standing on the fence anymore. And again, the fact that this point is still so relevant today is very terrifying. And it's honestly probably a statement within itself that this is still relevant. And he says, Black people are dying every day. So if you're not on the side that's fighting for their lives, then you're on, like, what side are you on really? You're on the other side. And yeah, again, he's not wrong. Like, it's kind of hard to be, like, I can see both sides, and it is a really amazing conversation to, like, see being had. Because it's the battle that you have, I guess, every day. To like, are you doing enough? What can you be doing? Yeah. I don't know. I love this movie for that. I think it's great. I can't remember the last time I've seen a conversation being had like this. That's very real.
Yeah, I think that's like the main thing from this movie that I took. It's just, I mean, we're kind of getting to let's just move on and I'll say it at the end.
So, another great conversation that Jim Brown has, I was very surprised that they had this, but I'm so glad they included it, where he was talking to Malcolm about the difference of like Malcolm being a light-skinned Black person and then Jim Brown being darker skinned, and how like just colorism in general, right? And Malcolm tries to dismiss this by saying, I think he says like, yeah, but we're all like, it doesn't matter what shades our skin are. We're all Black people. And Jim was like, yeah, but like, you don't get treated the same way I do. I think he said like when white people leave the room, there's still a separation of darker and lighter skin. So like, you can't just act like that's not happening. And he does agree. He brings up a good point. And I've heard this point before, even now, that the answer is economic freedom. And he said, and Sam is the most economic free person here. So like
he says you don't even have a job.
Oh, yeah.
He hit him with that hard, bro.
Malcolm I think that's the only time we've seen where Malcolm was just speechless. Like, he didn't say anything.
He's just like, ooh. And Jim, he's like, feels bad. He's like, that's not what I meant, right? Like,
he's like, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I think too, I do love the sentiment that Malcolm has, and he says it all the time, where he's like, I'm only harsh and I'm only saying this stuff because I care about you and because I see your potential. And I do love that about this friendship, that the four of them are very real with each other to a degree that's pretty harsh. I mean, at a lot of points, they're just yelling at each other, but they're just trying to make each other better, right? Like, I think it's a good point where it's another conversation people are having where you can have like they both believe in what they're doing, right? They both believe that they should be helping to, like to contribute to civil rights, to the movement, right? They're just going about it different ways. So it's like that difference between like I think people say like your viewpoints versus your morality. Like they have the same morality where they obviously all want the same thing. They want equality, they want equity, they want all of those things. But they're just going about it different ways, and they're having these conversations that are so important to have, so that Sam can have a different perspective to see what Malcolm is going through, and then Malcolm can have that same perspective to see what like Sam is going through. All those things where they're like coming to the table with their experiences and trying to say, this is what's working for me and this is what I want to do. And I don't know. I think it's just an important like thing to watch. Sorry.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, and then another thing that Jim says, this conversation is like an amazing conversation. So I quoted it directly from the movie where he says, some white folks cannot wait to pat themselves on the back for not being cruel to us. And I think that's a perfect way to describe some of the activism I see.
Yeah, it's like he says another line to the same effect where it's like, is the dog gonna give you a treat because you didn't kick him today or something like that, or give you a trophy?
And he says sometimes he hates, and I think because if you think about like in the beginning what happened to him, he says he hates those people sometimes more than he hates the people that are just outright racist.
Yeah, they were like rednecks is what he says.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see that so much on Twitter. I see it all the time.
Exactly. And I mean, personally, we have to all do like I guess the self-reflection to say, well, do we do that? Do I pat myself on the back too much for being like, well, I could have, in that situation, I could have been racist, but I didn't. But that's not an accomplishment. Like you should just always be doing that.
It's not enough to just not be racist.
We have to be anti-racist. That's the thing that's important, is that you can't just being, I'm reading a book, I forget the name, but I think it's called How to Be Anti-Racist actually, but it's not racist is basically the same thing as being racist. I mean, you're just like, well, I don't do it. So like, I'm fine. When that's not minimum. Enough. Yeah. That's not even the bare minimum. Might as well not do anything. Like if you're saying you're not racist, you just might as well be racist because you're not actively contributing to anti-racism, to like the antithesis of racism. Like what's the point if you're not going to be doing that? And yeah, I love that quote because it just reminds me of that. Like just because you had the opportunity to do something shitty and you didn't, that doesn't mean anything. All right. So after this, Sam wants to leave to a real party because he's still pissed. But everybody else wants to stay. And then Malcolm, I think he's trying to salvage like what's happening because he tells them a story about Sam performing. And it's about how somebody, I think Jackie Wilson, like messed with his, I forgot what they called him, but he like messed with his sound system. So he had to sing a cappella. But this is actually not true. So soul singer Jackie Wilson did not intentionally mess with the sound system during a Sam Cooke show in Boston, inspiring Cooke to lead his audience in an a cappella version of his 1962 hit Chain Gang. Even though it was a really cool scene, it didn't really happen like that. But the mischief from this flashback scene is inspired by a real knack by Wilson to playfully sabotage Cooke, as seen in a video, which you can watch on YouTube. It's like a very old video, but it's really cool, where Wilson interrupts Cooke trying to lip sync his song Cha Cha Cha. And while speaking on a podcast, Powers, who wrote this movie, explained that this emotional flashback was a quote composite of several shows. So a cool moment, but it's not historically accurate. So I just wanted to point that out. After this, Malcolm says that one instance showed him that he could move mountains with so little. And so that's what I mean by it brings like such a great point of view into his perspective, because I think at first I was very annoyed by Malcolm because I was like, leave it alone. Like he's doing what he can. But then I saw, like, after seeing that perspective and like knowing his reasoning, I was like, oh, okay. Like I understood him more as a person. which I think is an amazing, like a show of an amazing writer of this movie to like bring us.
Sure.
He like, it was like, I felt like a fucking ping pong ball. I was going back and forth of like what I believed.
Yeah.
All right. So after this, he also tells them that I think this is the plan that he was talking about with his wife, where he's leaving the Nation of Islam because of the leadership, because of the disagreements he's had. And he's starting a new organization. And he says that he wants Cassius to move with him. And he kind of implies that, or at least he doesn't imply, but it's implied that he's using Cassius to get people to move over. Like that's why it was so important to him to get him to not only become a Muslim, but also like move over to his new organization, which pisses Cassius off. But I didn't take any notes, but I feel like it like they kind of subdue him. They're like, it's okay. Like he doesn't mean that. Like Malcolm was like, dude, if you don't want to do it, then you don't have to. Like I'm not using you. And they're friends, so obviously he's not using him.
Yeah.
After this, we're getting towards the end of the movie. So after this, they leave to talk to reporters. It's just Cassius and Malcolm. And as soon as Malcolm leaves, Sam tells Jim that it does embarrass him. Like I think he says that. Well, I don't know if he says this exactly, but we learned that the reason he was so pissed about Malcolm bringing up the song is that he does embarrass him. He says, I'm called, like, people call me Mr. Soul, and I haven't even come close to writing a song like that.
Yeah.
But then I think he mentions that he has written a song that he's like, he just hasn't released for whatever reason. So yeah, I just like that as soon as Malcolm leaves, he's like, okay, but he was kind of right.
Yeah, you could tell it hit a nerve.
Which, I mean, but that's the thing though. That's like I loved seeing that perspective of, because I mean, nobody's perfect. I think I've also done that where I'm like, well, this famous person hasn't said anything. But especially when they're a part of the group that is being oppressed, then you can't really, like, you can't judge it at all or even know what is going on in their head. So like, what's the point of pressuring them to do something that maybe they're not emotionally ready to do? So yeah, I just love seeing that. And I think this is the part that you're talking about. So do you want to talk about it? The end where they're at the bar and Malcolm's there taking pictures?
Yeah, so they all go to a it seems like a diner.
Yeah, I think so. They mention it in the beginning where they say it's a diner.
Okay, yeah. So I was doing like some research on the movie while we were watching this part, and it's like specifically like it's a very like Malcolm is behind the counter and he's taking a picture of everyone. Like it's like a bunch of people all there to just like have fun, chill, celebrate, cash. And there's a picture of that exact same shot, and I showed Kayla, and she was like, "Whoa." Because she's like, whoa, this is like, it was like shocking how Regina got it so like spot on. Like even the guy who's next to Cash is like, it looks exactly like the guy in the picture. But yeah, it's just like ridiculous how close they got that.
Yeah, she does a fucking amazing job. I don't know, I should look up if this is her first movie that she's directed. I think it is. But holy shit. It's angering how good she is at literally everything. Yeah.
But and Kayla didn't even know that she directed it. She's like, because she saw like we were watching the credits. She was like, Regina King, is that a woman? Did a woman direct this? And I was like, let me show you who directed it. I pulled up and she's like, oh my gosh, I love her so much.
Yeah, I truly floored by how she accomplished that. I think too, well, I guess let's talk a little bit about like the ending. So like I said, this movie is amazingly paced. I think it's almost 2 hours and it didn't feel like that at all. Yeah. It's also, I should look this up, but I think it was based on a play. And typically I don't like to watch movies that are based on plays because some of them just feel like movies that are like, it just, you just put them on a stage and they just record it. Like, it doesn't feel like they're using the movie format in any way. They're just recording a play, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't feel like that at all.
Like looking back, it makes sense because like it's only one place or like
Yeah,
a couple of
it's the perfect
places.
setting for a play, like a perfect background for a play.
Yeah. Well, Moonlight is also based on a play, no?
I think so. Yeah. Maybe. Well, I said, I mean, like typically don't, but obviously there's some that I fucking love. But yeah, this one just felt like, I feel like they used that hotel room. Like it didn't feel like stuffy. Like I didn't feel like I was stuck within one place. It felt very, I don't know. They did it very dynamically where they would take us away. Like they would take us to the phone booth that Malcolm was using. They would take us to the roof. It ended at the diner. Like they did use their space really well.
Yeah.
Which I loved. Okay. And so after this, we do see a glimpse into their lives after that night. So let's start with Sam. So Sam Cooke debuts a song called A Change Is Gonna Come on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And that actually happened. So Cooke performed the song exactly once on TV, and Regina King's movie recreates the footage that has since been lost to time. But the context is askew, as Jack Hamilton points out in a recent Slate piece about Cooke in the film. The movie falsely portrays Cooke's pre-1964 songs, quote, in order to make change seem like a bigger leap than it was. Yes, A Change Is Gonna Come was influenced by Blowin' in the Wind, I think the song by Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
But with songs like 1960s Chain Gang, Cooke was already making socially conscious songs that reached well beyond simpler pop standards. A night like February 25th, so the movie wouldn't have been an epiphany for Cooke, but maybe an affirmation. So what they're saying, because I don't know if people to like pay attention to just my like monotone, but that it's not that he hadn't been making songs like about, oppression or just about his experiences. It's that maybe this was the way for him to like realize he needs to do that more.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know though, but I think there's something to be said about like maybe in the 1960s he wasn't as popular, as famous, and then once he started to rise to fame, then he wasn't using his voice as much, and that's what angered Malcolm. That seems like maybe what could have happened. But anyways, that performance, holy shit.
Good performance.
Leslie Odom Jr., like, I think he's relatively famous. Like, I think he's Hamilton, but how are we not talking about this man more? Holy shit. I cried. Okay, but it's not that hard to make me cry nowadays, but holy shit, I cried. Okay, after this, Cassius Clay becomes Muhammad Ali. And so an interesting thing about this part is that he chooses to go by the name Cassius X, a nod to his friend and mentor Malcolm X. Like I think that's what they show in the reporters where they were out. He mentioned that he was going to become a Muslim and that he was going to go by Cassius X. But the movie's final images show not Cassius X, but Muhammad Ali being accepted by the Nation of Islam. In real life, Malcolm X left the nation several days after the Florida gathering, following Muhammad Ali's decision to choose the leader Elijah Muhammad over Malcolm as his mentor. So this is the Elijah Muhammad that Malcolm was having a disagreement with in the first place. In Ali's 2004 autobiography, The Soul of a Butterfly, the boxer expressed his regrets about how his relationship ended, calling it, quote, one of the mistakes that I regret most in my life. And this part, when I read it, it also made me cry. So he said, I wish I had been able to tell Malcolm I was sorry, that he was right about so many things, but he was killed before I got the chance. Ugh, so sad. Okay. And then speaking of Malcolm, we do see that his house gets firebombed while him and his kids and his wife are in it, which is fucking terrifying. And while I think they're at a hotel, they're obviously not in their house. We see that the manuscript of his autobiography is completed. Then we see that Jim Brown retired. So he officially retired from football on the set of the movie The Dirty Dozen, a moment seen at the very end of this movie. His career as a lead and supporting character would include the blaxploitation classic Slaughter's Big Ripoff, The Running Man, Any Given Sunday, and many more movies. But the last scene that we see is where Malcolm is watching Sam Cooke singing, and as soon as Sam Cooke like finishes singing, he's crying, he wipes a tear, and then Malcolm's watching, and I think he finally is like, okay, well he's doing it, and it ends.
Yeah.
Oh man,
what a freaking movie!
So fucking good.
I just gotta say, this movie was awesome. I felt like I was watching a very prominent conversation. Like regardless of what happened that night, like a million things could have happened that night. With like such prominent figures in like of that time. I think this is a good maybe glimpse in what might have happened, and I'm sure that conversation was just as amazing, if not better. But this was awesome. An event that I didn't even know happened.
Me neither. It made me really embarrassed for how little I know about like history.
And something that happened like 60 years ago. Not even that long ago.
Yeah. Man, such a good movie. And I think I've said this before, where it feels like I love when a movie feels like a gift. And it feels like a gift. Like it feels like every part of it, where these, like, first of all, these men gathering, and they're not just talking about civil rights, but they're not talking about civil rights for like, just like celebrities. They're talking about, like, they have Malcolm X there. They're talking about what they can do to help better like the country. So it's a gift that happened. It's a gift that these people existed. It's a gift that this writer took this important event and gave us something that we can like ruminate on and think about. This movie gave me so many things to think about. And then Regina King, she's just a fucking gift. And just the fact that she, like you said, this movie, or I feel like this is one of those movies or one of these instances, especially movies having to do with real people, where it could have been such a dud. Like it could have like tried to mean something and didn't, but this movie, like it meant everything that it tried to do. It accomplished everything that she tried to do. And that's not easy. Can you imagine like just making a movie about one of them? I mean, I think that's happened before for many of them, but just trying to make a movie about just one of them, but instead doing all four of them and it being amazing. I can't imagine.
That's such a challenge, and I think everyone involved did such a good job.
An amazing job. All right, I have a couple of fun facts. Unless you want to keep talking about.
I have a fun fact that's not really related to this movie.
Okay.
I just want to mention Regina King. This is her first directorial debut, but she's directed a lot of like TV.
Yeah, that's what I knew that.
She directed an episode of This Is Us, which I didn't know.
Which one?
Season 2? I don't know. It's called Season 2 episode. I don't know what episode this is, but it's called The 20s. She's also directed an episode of Shameless and The Good Doctor and Scandal.
I know she's done that before. I just didn't know if she...
First directorial.
Wow.
I mean, like feature film.
Oh, man. This is her first.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, these aren't really... the first two are not fun at all. So the events in this film take place February 1964. I think they had a day. Let me find the actual day. What did I say? February 25th, 1964. Sam Cooke in December on December 11th, 1964, was shot to death in a very bizarre motel incident. I was going to go into it, but it's pretty convoluted. So if you want to know about it, then just look it up because it is very strange.
Yeah, Kayla told me about it.
Yeah.
It's pretty gnarly, pretty crazy.
It's really weird.
So go check that out.
So that happened. Like I said, the night happened February 25th, 1964. Sam Cooke was killed on December 11th, 1964. And then shortly after, on February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated. So all that happened very quickly, like very close to each other. And then a couple more like fun facts. This is the first film by a Black female director selected by the Venice Film Festival. Sad. Not really fun either, actually.
No, but like good for Venice.
Not soon enough, but okay, good. I guess it's kind of, we can't pat them on the back for doing something that they should have done, Anthony.
Yeah.
So, the last one is that this was released on Prime Video, like we said, on January 15th, 2021. Last week, actually, I think, which was also director Regina King's 50th birthday. And the fact that she's 50, she does not look 50 at all.
She does not.
I love her. Okay. So I do want to close out talking. I don't want to close out the episode on this, but I want to close out talking about this movie with the quote from the ending, which shook me. It is a time. So quote, "It is a time for martyrs now. And if I am to be one, it will be for the cause of brotherhood. That's the only thing that can save this country." And that was said by Malcolm X, and it was said 2 days before he was assassinated.
Crazy.
All right. Sorry, that's a weird spot to end, but love this movie. If you... it makes me want to learn a lot more about them, and I know there's movies about some of these men that I really want to watch, so yeah.
I hope this is shown in school, or if you just go watch it. I feel like everyone should watch this movie.
Yeah, like you said, I think a lot of people were talking about it on Twitter when it came out, but I've heard nothing really else about it. So hopefully people like it and they want to talk about it. And she's nominated for something, or anybody's nominated for something. All right. What are we watching next time?
Next time, we're going to be watching a movie I haven't seen in a while.
Oh, God.
One of the last movies I saw in the theater. No, I lied. I saw it like August 2019, maybe. Yeah. So we're going to be watching The Farewell.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
What is that on?
That is on Prime. I feel like we've been picking a lot of Prime, but
Prime they have a lot of good selections.
They do.
That's what Fleabag's on.
Yeah. Other than that, go check out our Twitter. What is it? I don't know what it is. Bro Sis Show, Instagram at Broder Sister Show, Brother Sister Show. Broder. Man, my tweet didn't pop off as much as I wanted it to.
The Hereditary one?
Yeah.
It's okay. How is your TikTok doing?
It has like 600 views, I think. It has like next to the play button on my profile. That's what it says. But like the Robert Pattinson one got way more traction, but I put less effort into that one.
Maybe people are tired of Hereditary. Maybe Hereditary is the stale meme. A lot of people are tired of the Bernie one too, though.
Yeah.
Just think of more memes, Anthony, not Hereditary based. I feel like
it just came up.
Huh?
I was gonna do Bernie sitting at the table in Midsummer.
I think somebody did that though. I saw that somewhere.
I don't know.
Think of just one other movie.
I don't know why Hereditary came to my mind.
It's very memeable.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like I was really onto something with Bernie running.
I thought it was good. Or not Anthony, you're Anthony. Sebastian, I showed it to him and he laughed a lot. So
Shout out to Sebastian.
yeah, he's your
that's all I
number
have.
one supporter.
That's all I have, really.
All right. Next time, The Farewell on Amazon Prime.
Amazon.
See ya.